The private hospital stood high above the city, a gleaming tower of glass and steel where silence cost more than most people's annual salary. Inside, the polished floors shone like mirrors, reflecting cold light from crystal fixtures overhead. Everything smelled faintly of antiseptic and old money. Outside room 702, the VIP suite reserved for the dying or the powerful or both, a crowd had gathered. They weren't grieving, not really. Their faces were too tight, their smiles too rehearsed. They were waiting, circling, calculating. Preston Thorne adjusted his gold tie in the reflection of the glass doors, checking his hair for the third time. Beside him, Marissa Thorne scrolled through her phone, her crimson nails tapping restlessly on the screen. Clara Evans leaned against the wall, already live-streaming to her followers. Still waiting outside Logan's room, big news coming. Fingers crossed he finally signed the will. Stay tuned, babes. Lillian Ward clutched her string of pearls like a talisman, whispering to Gerald Hayes about summer homes and stock options. The air crackled with a greedy kind of anticipation, the kind that smelled like perfume and desperation. And then, the elevator dinged. All heads turned. The doors slid open, revealing a woman who did not belong. She stepped out slowly, adjusting the strap of a simple cloth bag slung over her shoulder. Her hair, dark with streaks of silver, was pulled into a low braid. Her cardigan was faded navy, her dress a soft gray linen that hung loose over a slender frame. Her shoes were flats, scuffed from years of wear. She looked ordinary, plain, invisible. Except she wasn't. Who the hell is that? Preston muttered under his breath. Marissa wrinkled her nose. Is she staff? Clara tilted her phone, zooming in for a better shot. She's got to be housekeeping, or maybe a volunteer. Laughter rippled through the group, sharp and brittle. Probably a charity case, Lillian added. Logan was always so sentimental about his strays. But the woman didn't look at them. She didn't glance left or right. Her gaze was fixed ahead, calm and unflinching, like someone who knew exactly where she was going. She's heading for room 702, Gerald noted, frowning. Who let her up here? She must be lost, Preston said, louder now, stepping forward. Ma'am, excuse me, that's a private room. The woman paused. She turned her head slightly, enough to meet his gaze. Her eyes were hazel, deep and steady, with the kind of quiet gravity that made noise feel small. I know, she said simply. Her voice was low, even, unbothered. And then she walked on, leaving Preston blinking after her. Did she just ignore me? Preston sputtered. Who the hell does she think she is? Clara lifted her phone again. Oh, I am definitely posting this. She tapped furiously at the screen, captioning her photo. Random old lady sneaking into Logan's room. Lol. Guess she thinks he's handing out charity. A chorus of snickers followed. But no one stopped the woman as she reached the door to room 702. No one dared. She placed her hand on the handle, pausing for just a breath, as if steadying herself. Then she pushed the door open and slipped inside. The door closed behind her with a quiet click. Silence fell over the hallway. Who was that? Marissa whispered, a tremor of unease creeping into her voice. Preston scowled, tugging at his tie. I don't know, but she's not supposed to be here. Inside the room, the woman stood alone. Logan Thorne lay on the bed, surrounded by machines, their rhythmic beeps filling the quiet space. His face was pale, his eyes closed, his chest rising and falling with the effort of each breath. The woman set her bag down carefully on the chair beside him. She sat. She reached for his hand, folding it gently between hers, her lips pressed together, trembling faintly. For a long moment she just looked at him, tracing the familiar lines of his weathered face. You stubborn old fool, she murmured, a ghost of a smile flickering at the corner of her mouth. She leaned closer, her forehead almost touching his. I'm here, she whispered. I'm still here. Outside the glass doors the crowd shifted uneasily. Preston paced. Clara checked her phone again. Gerald whispered urgently to Marissa. Where's the lawyer? Marissa demanded. Why hasn't Grayson arrived? Almost on cue, the elevator chimed again. Arthur Grayson stepped out, carrying a sleek briefcase, his expression grim beneath steel-gray hair. He looked down the hallway at the gathered heirs, his gaze flicking briefly toward the closed door of room 702. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs, the reading of Logan Thorne's will take place inside. In there? Preston barked. With her? Grayson's face didn't waver. Yes, with Mrs. Ivy Thorne. Silence. A silence so deep it seemed to press against the walls. Clara's phone slipped from her hand, clattering softly to the floor. Marissa's mouth hung open, words lost somewhere between outrage and disbelief. Preston's face drained of color. "Mrs.?" he echoed. "No, that's impossible." But Grayson was already turning toward the door. Inside, Ivy lifted her head, hearing his footsteps approach. "Arthur," she said softly as he entered. "They know now." He nodded solemnly. "They know." And outside, in the Hall of Wealth and Whispers, the sharks began to circle faster. Because the woman they had mocked, dismissed, and ignored was the woman who now held everything they had ever wanted. For a moment, no one moved. The hallway outside room 702 was frozen in stunned disbelief, as if Arthur Grayson's words had cracked the very foundation beneath their feet. Mrs. Ivy Thorne. The name hovered in the sterile air like a ghost none of them wanted to acknowledge. "She's lying," Marissa finally hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "She has to be lying." Clara recovered first, snatching up her phone from the floor, her fingers already flying across the screen. "No way. No way this is real." Her followers flooded her live stream with question marks and shocked emojis. "I've never even seen her before," she muttered, turning the camera toward the closed door. "Who the hell is Ivy Thorne?" Gerald stepped forward, frowning deeply. "Logan never mentioned a wife," he said, looking toward Lillian for confirmation. "Not once." "Exactly," Lillian agreed, her pearls trembling against her throat. "He was a bachelor. Everyone knew it. This woman, she's an imposter." Preston shook his head, disbelief sharpening into fury. "I'm not letting her steal what's ours." He stormed toward the door, reaching for the handle, but a security guard stepped in his way. "Mr. Thorne, you're not authorized to enter right now," the guard said firmly. Preston's face flushed crimson. "Not authorized? This is my family's business. That woman, she's nothing. She doesn't belong here." Inside, Ivy heard every word through the glass. Her hands tightened around Logan's, her throat tightening, but she stayed still, calm, silent. "I'm calling my lawyer," Preston snapped, pulling out his phone. "This won't stand. I don't care what Grayson says." Marissa crossed her arms, glaring at the door. He must have been manipulated, drugged. She probably took advantage of him when he was sick. Clara's eyes gleamed with excitement as her live stream view count climbed. "This is insane," she said to her followers. "We've got a fraudster in room 702. She thinks she's walking away with everything. Let's see how long that lasts." A new caption popped up on her screen. "Gold digger alert. Stay tuned for the fallout." Laughter bubbled from her lips, sharp and cruel. Inside, Ivy pressed her forehead briefly against Logan's hand. Breathing deeply, she could feel the storm brewing just beyond the walls. The same storm she'd felt for years. The whispers, the looks, the judgment. She lifted her head, watching the monitors beeping steadily beside him. His heart rate was stable, his breathing even. But he hadn't stirred. Not yet. Arthur Grayson stood quietly by the window, his briefcase unopened on the side table. "They won't believe it," Ivy said softly. "They never would," Grayson replied. "They were never here for him, only for what he could give." Ivy's lips pressed together. "I didn't want this to be a fight." "It was always going to be," Grayson said gently. Logan knew that. Outside, Preston was pacing again, his tie askew, his voice rising. "We need to go in there. We can't let her pull this stunt. If we wait, she'll have Grayson reading that will and locking us out." "Why haven't they started already?" Marissa demanded. "What are they waiting for?" Gerald checked his watch impatiently. "He's buying her time. That lawyer's in on it." Clara's phone pinged wildly as comments flooded in. "She looks like a janitor. There's no way that woman is Mrs. Thorne." Expose her," Clara grinned. "Don't worry, guys. We'll find out the truth." She turned to Preston. "We could demand proof, a marriage license, witnesses, anything." "Exactly," Preston said, snapping his fingers. "She won't have it. She can't." Lillian narrowed her eyes at the door. "Or we force Grayson to bring the documents out here. Let us see them." "I'll handle it," Preston growled. He stormed back to the security guard. "Tell Grayson we demand evidence, now, or we'll call the board of directors ourselves." The guard didn't flinch. "I'll relay your message." Inside, Ivy sat straighter as the guard knocked softly and opened the door. "Mr. Grayson," the guard said, "they're demanding proof of marriage before the will is read." Grayson sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Of course they are." He glanced at Ivy. "Do you want me to handle this?" Ivy's gaze turned toward the door. Her hazel eyes were calm, but something steely flickered beneath the quiet. "No," she said softly. "I'll show them." Grayson blinked. "Are you sure?" She nodded once. Grayson hesitated, then opened the briefcase, pulling out a worn envelope. "Everything's in here. Marriage license, photos, letters, originals." Ivy rose slowly from her chair. She smoothed the folds of her cardigan, adjusted the strap of her bag over her shoulder, and took the envelope in her hands. She crossed the room to the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. "You don't have to prove anything to them," Grayson said quietly. "I know," Ivy replied, "but I want them to see." She opened the door. Every head snapped toward her. The crowd fell silent, their hostility coiling tighter at the sight of her. Clara's phone lifted instantly. Camera pointed. Marissa folded her arms. Preston's lip curled. "Where's the proof?" Preston demanded. Ivy stepped forward, holding out the envelope. "It's all here." Preston snatched it from her hand, tearing it open. He pulled out the marriage certificate, scanning it furiously. No, this can't be," he muttered, flipping it over, searching for flaws. Marissa grabbed the photos next, her face blanching as she stared at a younger Logan smiling beside Ivy in a simple courthouse wedding shot. "She forged these," Marissa spat. "She has to have forged them." Clara zoomed in on the certificate with her phone camera. "Show them the date," she told her followers. 7 years ago? No way, no one ever knew. Gerald held up one of the letters, reading aloud. "My dearest Ivy, thank you for loving me without asking for anything in return. You are my beginning and my end." He stopped, his voice faltering. His hand trembled slightly. Preston crumpled the certificate in his fist. "It's fake. It's all fake. No one marries in secret. Logan would have told us." Ivy's voice cut through the rising chaos, quiet but unwavering. "He didn't tell you," she said, "because he knew exactly who you are." Every head turned. Her gaze swept across them, steady as stone. "He didn't trust you," Ivy continued. "He loved you, but he didn't trust you." Marissa's face twisted. "You're lying. You're nothing." Ivy's lips curved, faint but sure. "If I'm nothing," she said softly, "why are you all so afraid?" The question hung in the sterile air, sharp as a knife. And for the first time since she'd arrived, no one had an answer. The silence outside room 702 hung heavy and jagged, like glass waiting to shatter. Ivy stood in the doorway, her figure quiet yet unyielding, the envelope of proof clutched loosely in her hands. Across from her, Preston still held the crumpled marriage certificate, his knuckles white with fury. Marissa's lips pressed into a thin, bitter line. Clara's phone hovered midair, recording every second. "I don't care what papers you wave around," Preston sneered. "It doesn't change a thing. You don't belong here." Ivy's eyes flickered to him, calm as a still lake. "That's not your decision to make." Before Preston could retort, Arthur Grayson stepped forward, his briefcase now open beside him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice steady, cutting through the rising tension. "It's time. The reading of Mr. Logan Thorne's will begins now." Preston's mouth opened in protest. "We're doing this in there? With her?" "Yes," Grayson said firmly. "Inside, only immediate family, legal representatives, and authorized parties." He glanced at the security guards nearby. "Everyone else will remain outside." "I am family," Preston barked. "She's the outsider." Grayson's gaze hardened. "She's his wife." A beat of silence. Then Lillian's voice, low and poisonous. "She bewitched him. She must have." Marissa rolled her eyes. "Can we just get this over with? This circus is embarrassing." Grayson motioned for Ivy to step back into the room. "Mrs. Thorne, please." Ivy turned silently and walked back inside. Grayson followed, closing the door behind them with a soft but deliberate click. The sound echoed down the hall like a verdict. Outside, the crowd surged forward, pressing closer to the door, trying to glimpse through the frosted glass. Inside, Ivy sat once more beside Logan's bed. His chest rose and fell steadily, his eyelids fluttering faintly, but still closed. Grayson took his place at a small table near the window, setting the briefcase before him. He pulled out a sealed envelope stamped with a wax crest. "Ivy," he said gently, "Logan prepared this will 3 years ago. It's been reviewed, notarized, and legally verified. He made no amendments since." Ivy nodded silently. Grayson broke the seal. The crack of the wax was small, but outside it seemed to ripple through the hall like a gunshot. He unfolded the document slowly, adjusted his glasses, and began to read. I, Logan Alexander Thorne, being of sound mind embodied, declare this my final will and testament. Outside, Preston paced like a caged animal. He's reading it in there without us. This isn't legal. Clara pressed her phone against the glass, trying to catch any sound. What's he saying? What's she doing? Gerald knocked on the door sharply. Arthur, open this door. We deserve to hear it. Inside, Grayson continued unfazed. To my extended family, business associates, and colleagues, I leave nothing but this truth. Wealth reveals character, not worth. Ivy's lips parted slightly, a flicker of bittersweet sadness crossing her face. Outside, Preston froze. What? Grayson's voice remained steady, deliberate. All my assets, company shares, properties, accounts, and intellectual rights are bequeathed to one person, the one who stood by me without question, without asking, without needing. He looked up briefly, meeting Ivy's gaze. My wife, Ivy. A sharp gasp erupted outside the door. The sound of it punched through the glass like a wave. Preston slammed his fist against the wall. No! Marissa's voice rose shrill and furious. That's a lie! She tricked him. He was weak. Clara's phone clattered to the floor as she stared wide-eyed at the door. Inside, Grayson folded the will carefully, placing it back into the envelope. It's final, he said quietly. It cannot be contested. Ivy swallowed hard, her hands clasping together in her lap. From outside came a loud thud. Preston had thrown a chair against the door. She's not walking out of here with everything, he shouted. We'll see about this. Grayson sighed, signaling to the security guards through the glass. Two nodded and stepped forward, standing firm outside. Should I call for more security? Grayson asked Ivy. She shook her head. Let them be. They won't listen anyway. Suddenly, the door flew open with a bang. Preston stormed in, flanked by Marissa, Clara, and Gerald. The guards scrambled after them but hesitated at the threshold. You're not locking us out of our family's fortune, Preston roared. His tie hung crooked, sweat beading his forehead. I told you, Grayson began. Preston waved him off. Save it, Arthur. We're here. We're not leaving. Marissa's gaze landed on Ivy like a knife. You really think you've won, don't you? Ivy rose slowly, her face unreadable. It was never a game. Marissa stepped closer, her crimson dress brushing against Ivy's cardigan. You played him. You wormed your way into his life. Clara pulled out her phone again. Smile for the camera, Ivy. Hope you enjoyed your 15 minutes. Gerald sneered. You'll be out of here within a month. No one will let you keep this. Grayson stood protectively beside Ivy. That's enough. This reading is legal and binding. Preston lunged forward, grabbing Ivy's tote bag from the chair. No, Ivy gasped, reaching for it. But Preston had already ripped it open, spilling its contents across the floor. Papers, letters, photos, a small velvet box. He kicked one photo aside. What's this? More fake memories? Marissa stooped down, picking up a letter. She tore it in half with a vicious smile. Looks like old love notes. How quaint. Clara aimed her phone down at the scattered items. Wow, this is pathetic. Ivy stood frozen, her chest heaving, her lips trembling. And then, slowly, she sank to her knees. She began gathering the pieces, her hands shaking as she picked up torn photographs, crumpled letters, papers stained from the floor. Look at her, Gerald scoffed, like a maid cleaning up. Marissa laughed, cruel and sharp. How fitting. Ivy's fingers gripped a torn wedding photo, Logan's face ripped clean in two. Her eyes welled with tears, her breath came faster. Outside, the crowd had gathered at the doorway, watching, whispering, recording. Poor thing doesn't even know it's over, Clara said smugly. She's done. Ivy's hand stopped moving. She sat still among the wreckage. Then, slowly, deliberately, she rose. She held the torn photo in her hands, lifting it as she turned to face them. Her tears still clung to her cheeks. But her voice, when it came, was clear, low, and shaking with something deeper than rage. Enough. The single word cut the room in half. For the first time since she arrived, they all went silent. Enough. The word didn't come as a scream. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't loud at all. But somehow, it carried. It filled the room, pressed against every chest, wrapped itself around every throat. Ivy stood tall among the torn papers and scattered memories, her cardigan hanging loose over her shoulders, her hair slightly undone from the scuffle. Her hands trembled, but her gaze was steady, sharp, clear, unwavering. No one spoke. Not Preston, not Marissa, not Clara, not Gerald. Even Clara's phone, still recording, hung lower now, as if the device itself sensed the shift. I have listened to you, Ivy said quietly, her voice low but cutting. All of you, from the moment I walked through those doors. She took a step forward. The crowd instinctively pulled back. I listened while you laughed, Ivy continued. I listened while you whispered, while you posted your little captions, while you tore apart things that didn't belong to you. Her hands lifted the torn wedding photo. She held it up for them to see, the jagged rip down Logan's face, the faint crease through her own smile. This is what you are, she said softly, shaking the photo just enough for the rip to flutter. This is what you do. Preston scoffed, trying to regain ground. You're overreacting. We were protecting our family. Protecting? Ivy's voice sharpened, slicing through his words. Protecting what? A name? A fortune? An empire built on a man you never even cared to know. Preston's mouth opened, then closed. I sat beside him, Ivy said, her voice growing, her breath quickening. I held his hand through every surgery. I watched him cry when his father died. I cleaned his wounds after his accident. Where were you? She turned, pinning Marissa next. Where were you when he couldn't sleep from the pain? When he couldn't walk without help? When he begged for one more chance to make things right? Marissa's jaw tightened. We were busy counting his money. Ivy's lips curved into a bitter smile. Busy waiting for him to die. Clara stepped forward, trying to lift her phone again. You don't understand. Ivy's hand shot out, grabbing Clara's wrist, lowering the phone gently but firmly. Her eyes locked onto Clara's. I understand more than you ever will, Ivy said, her voice soft again but edged with steel. I understand what love looks like when no one else is watching. I understand what loyalty feels like when it costs everything. And I understand that you, all of you, only showed up when you smelled blood. Clara swallowed hard. We didn't mean. Yes, you did. Ivy released her wrist, letting the phone fall limp against Clara's side. She turned slowly, facing the entire room now. The security guards at the door watched silently, as if witnessing a trial no judge could call. You looked at me and saw nothing, Ivy said. An old woman. A charity case, a housekeeper, a mistake. She lifted her chin. But I was the one he chose. A beat of silence. I was the one who stayed. Her words hung heavy in the air, pressing down on every chest. Marissa stepped forward, defiance flickering in her glare. So what? You were a secret, hidden away. If he really loved you, why didn't he tell us? Ivy's smile returned, small, sad, knowing. Because he knew exactly what you'd do. The accusation landed like a slap. You'd try to tear me apart. You'd call me a liar, a thief. You'd destroy every piece of evidence if you could, just like you destroyed this. She held up the ripped photo again. Marissa's lips twisted. We're his family. No, Ivy whispered. You're his blood, but family? Her gaze swept over them again, steady as iron. Family shows up when it matters. Family doesn't count inheritance before the body's cold. Family doesn't treat love like an inconvenience. Preston's voice cracked. You're poisoning him against us. I didn't have to, Ivy said quietly. You did that all on your own. Behind her, Logan stirred faintly in the bed, but no one noticed yet. Ivy took a deep breath, her chest rising as if gathering the last of her strength. I didn't come here to fight, she said. I didn't come here to prove anything. I came to say goodbye. I thought, maybe, just once, you'd see me. Her eyes glistened, but her voice didn't waver. You didn't. She let the torn photo fall from her hands, fluttering to the floor like a broken wing. I'm done begging for a seat at your table, Ivy said. I have my own. She turned away, walking back toward Logan's bedside, each step deliberate, quiet, final. The room stayed frozen, their insults shriveled in their throats, their arrogance curling into unease. And then, a voice, low but firm. Ivy. They all turned. Logan's eyes were open. Ivy. The sound was barely a whisper, but it cut through the thick silence like a bell through fog. Every head turned. Logan's eyes were open. He lay propped against the pillows, pale but alert, his gaze flickering with a sharp, tired intelligence. His lips curled faintly, a smile, worn thin by pain but stubborn as ever. Ivy, he said again, stronger this time. Ivy spun around, her breath catching. Logan, she rushed to his side, taking his hand in both of hers. You're awake, he squeezed weakly. I've been awake. Her eyes welled again, but this time the tears were different, softer, trembling at the edge of relief. I heard everything, Logan murmured. His gaze shifted, moving past her to the crowd still frozen in the room. His eyes hardened. Everything. A ripple of discomfort passed through them. Preston's face drained of color. Marissa stiffened, arms folding tighter. Clara lowered her phone an inch, suddenly unsure. Gerald shifted his weight uneasily, avoiding eye contact. Logan, Preston began, forcing a smile. Thank God you're awake. We were so worried. Logan's eyes locked onto him. Were you? The smile faltered. Of course, we've been here the whole time looking out for you, trying to protect. Protect me? Logan's voice sharpened. Or protect what you thought you could steal? Preston's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I don't know what you mean. Logan's lips pressed into a grim line. You didn't even wait for the machines to flatline before counting my money. A faint gasp rippled from the doorway where others had gathered to watch. Marissa stepped forward, her voice sugar-sweet. Logan, darling, we didn't know she was your wife. No one told us. She didn't say. She shouldn't have had to say. Logan cut in, his tone cold steel. You saw a woman you didn't recognize, and your first instinct was to humiliate her. Marissa's smile crumbled. It was just a misunderstanding. No, Logan said quietly. It wasn't. He turned his gaze onto Clara next. You thought mocking her online would be funny? Clara flushed, her phone trembling in her grip. It was just a joke, Logan. My followers. Your followers will be gone by morning, Logan said flatly. Consider your sponsorships already notified. Clara's face blanched. You wouldn't. I did, Logan corrected. Gerald stepped forward now, desperation creeping into his voice. Logan, we've been with you for years, investing, advising. Surely you don't mean to leave everything to her. Logan's eyes narrowed. And yet none of you were here when I needed a hand to hold. None of you sat beside me when the doctors told me I might not walk again. None of you stayed when the headlines faded. He turned back to Ivy, his expression softening. But she did. Ivy's lips trembled again. She squeezed his hand, silent. Logan looked back at the crowd, his voice steady, final. She stayed, and that's why everything I built goes to her. A beat of silence. Then Preston exploded. You're out of your mind, he roared, fists clenched. She's got you brainwashed. You're throwing away the Thorne legacy for some maid. Logan's gaze chilled. Call her that again. Preston froze. Go on, Logan invited softly. Call her that again. The room seemed to shrink. Even the beeping machines felt distant, drowned beneath the weight of Logan's quiet fury. Preston's jaw worked uselessly. You showed me who you are, Logan said, voice calm, lethal. All of you. You laughed while she stood here alone. You mocked the woman who loved me when I had nothing to offer. You proved why you were never worthy of this. Marissa's voice trembled. Logan, please, we're family. Blood, Logan corrected. Not family. A hush fell again. Ivy's my family, Logan said. The only family I have left. Clara stepped forward, desperation lacing her words. Logan, we're sorry, okay? Tell her to forgive us. We didn't mean it. Her eyes darted to Ivy, pleading, but Ivy's face was stone. Her silence louder than any condemnation. Logan shook his head. It's not about forgiveness, Clara. It's about consequences. He turned to Grayson. Arthur. Grayson opened his briefcase, pulling out another document. As per Mr. Thorne's request, he announced, effective immediately, any individual identified as insulting, harassing, or defaming Mrs. Ivy Thorne by name, title, or implication shall be disinherited, removed from corporate holdings, and barred from estate properties. He unfolded the document, reading aloud the names. Preston Thorne, Marissa Thorne, Clara Evans, Gerald Hayes, Lillian Ward. Each name struck like a hammer. Preston staggered backward. You can't. I can, Logan said, and I did. Marissa's hands trembled. Logan, don't do this. Don't let her destroy us. Logan's gaze softened as it landed back on Ivy. She didn't destroy you. He turned back to them. You destroyed yourselves. The security guard stepped forward. Time to leave. Preston backed away, face twisted in disbelief. This isn't over. Yes, Logan said quietly. It is. As they were led out one by one, Preston shouting, Marissa weeping, Clara pale and mute, the room grew lighter, the air clearer, the noise fading. Only Ivy and Logan remained. Ivy sat beside him again, her hand slipping back into his. Logan let out a long breath, eyes closing briefly. You stayed. I always will, Ivy whispered. Outside, the hallway emptied. Inside, at last, there was peace. The hallway outside room 702 was a battlefield. Preston's shouts still echoed down the corridor as the security guards escorted him toward the elevators, his tie askew, his face blotched red with fury. You can't do this to me. I'm his blood. I'm a Thorne. Marissa stumbled beside him, her mascara streaking down her cheeks, her sobs sharp and jagged. Everything we sacrificed for her? Clara trailed behind them, pale and shaken, staring blankly at her phone as notifications poured in, follower counts plummeting, sponsorship deals pulling out, PR emails flooding her inbox like a tidal wave of collapse. Gerald walked stiffly, his jaw clenched, his wife muttering curses under her breath. Lillian's pearls clattered as she yanked them off, flinging them into the nearest trash can. No one spoke to each other. No one dared, because the door to room 702 had reopened. And Ivy stood there. She wasn't shouting, she wasn't gloating, she wasn't triumphant. She simply stood. Her cardigan hung loose around her shoulders. Her hair, streaked with silver, fell softly from its braid. The wedding ring glinted faintly on her finger as she gripped the doorframe with quiet strength. "Wait," Ivy called. The guards paused. Preston stopped mid-struggle. Marissa's sobs quieted. Clara turned, her eyes wide. Ivy stepped forward into the hallway, each footfall steady, deliberate, calm. She looked at them, not with hate, not with contempt, but with something deeper, something sadder, something stronger. "You'll tell everyone I cheated," Ivy said quietly, "that I schemed, that I seduced a dying man." No one denied it. Their silence was their confession. "You'll say I didn't deserve it," Ivy continued, "that I wasn't good enough, not young enough, not rich enough, not enough." Marissa's lips curled bitterly. "Because you aren't." Ivy's gaze softened. "And yet, here I am." Marissa recoiled. "I never wanted his empire," Ivy said. "I never wanted his name. I never wanted his wealth." She paused, letting the words settle. "I just wanted him." Preston sneered. "Then why take it all?" Ivy's lips curved, faint but sure. "Because he wanted me to." A beat of silence. "I didn't take it," Ivy said. "He gave it." Clara's phone buzzed again. Another sponsorship gone. Her thumb hovered uselessly over the screen. "You won't understand that," Ivy said softly. "You never will." She looked at Preston. "Because you thought love was a contract." She turned to Marissa. "You thought love was leverage." Her gaze met Clara's. "You thought love was currency." She took a breath. "And Gerald, you thought love was weakness." Gerald's eyes flickered away. Ivy let the silence stretch, filling every crack in the marble floor, every shadow in the walls. "Logan loved me," she said. "Not for how I looked. Not for who I impressed. Not for what I could gain him." Her hand lifted to the ring. "He loved me because I stayed." Clara's voice cracked. "You think that makes you special?" Ivy smiled gently. "No, it makes me his." Another silence. Then Ivy stepped back toward the door. "Security," she said softly. "Escort them out." The guards nodded. Preston lunged one last time, shouting, "This isn't over." Ivy's eyes were tired, steady. "Yes, it is." Marissa screamed as the elevator doors closed. Clara watched her follower count drop beneath 100,000 before the screen went black. And as the doors sealed, the noise faded. Ivy stood alone in the hallway, breathing in the quiet. A nurse passed by, offering a small, respectful nod. Ivy nodded back. She walked slowly down the corridor, pausing at the window at the end of the hall. The city stretched beneath her, lights glittering like scattered promises. For the first time, no one was watching her with judgment. No one was filming, no one was whispering. She pressed her palm against the glass, not victorious, not bitter, just free. Behind her, Arthur Grayson approached, his footsteps soft. "You handled that well," he said quietly. Ivy exhaled. "I didn't plan to handle anything." "You didn't have to," Grayson replied. "You are." Ivy turned to him, her lips curving faintly. "What happens now?" Grayson tucked the final set of documents under his arm. "Now, Mrs. Thorne, you decide." Ivy's gaze drifted back to the city. "I never wanted an empire," she murmured. "I know. I just wanted to be enough." Grayson's smile was small. "You've always been enough." Ivy closed her eyes briefly, then opened them, and turned back toward room 702. "Come," she said to Grayson. He followed. Together, they stepped back inside. Logan lay resting now, his breathing slow, peaceful. He opened his eyes as they entered, his gaze warming. "Is it done?" he asked. Ivy walked to him, sitting beside him again, taking his hand. "It's done." Logan smiled faintly. "I knew you'd do it." "I didn't want to," Ivy admitted. "I know," his eyes twinkled. "That's why I knew you could." She leaned forward, resting her head gently against his shoulder. Outside, the hallway emptied. Inside, at last, there was no more fight to be fought. Only quiet, only peace, only the woman who had stayed and the man who had never stopped loving her. A week passed. The storm had settled. The headlines were still circulating. Billionaire's secret wife inherits it all. Ivy Thorne, the unknown heiress, corporate coup or true love. But the frenzy was already fading, replaced by new scandals, fresher gossip. Inside the towering glass headquarters of Thorne Enterprises, a different kind of tension lingered. The boardroom stretched wide, its windows overlooking the city skyline. A long mahogany table gleamed under polished lights. Leather chairs lined its edges, half occupied by wary faces. They had been summoned, not by Preston, not by Marissa, not by any familiar figure they once bowed to. By her. Ivy Thorne stood at the head of the table. No designer suit adorned her. No diamonds sparkled at her throat. She wore a simple navy blouse, soft linen trousers, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a low bun. The only adornment was the gold wedding ring glinting faintly on her left hand. Arthur Grayson stood beside her, silent, watchful. The board members fidgeted under her calm gaze. "Well," said Richard Harper, an older man with a thinning hairline and sharp eyes, "we expected Mr. Thorne today." "I'm Mrs. Thorne," Ivy replied evenly. A ripple of murmurs. "Of course," Richard said quickly. "But surely there's an interim CEO, an acting executive?" "There's no interim," Ivy said softly. "Logan's directives were clear. Upon his incapacity, all decisions passed to me." "You have no business experience," another board member challenged. Ivy's lips curved faintly. "Neither did Logan when he started." Silence. "I understand your concerns," Ivy continued. "I'm not here to play pretend. I'm not here to micromanage divisions I don't understand." She folded her hands atop the table, her wedding ring catching a shard of sunlight. "I'm here because Logan trusted me." Richard leaned forward cautiously. "And what do you plan to do, Mrs. Thorne?" Ivy's gaze swept the room. "Nothing drastic," she said. "No mass layoffs, no sudden restructuring. I'm not here to break what he built." A collective exhale. "But," Ivy added, her voice sharpening slightly, "some things will change." The exhale caught mid-breath. "I've reviewed the reports," Ivy said. "The bonuses given to executives while workers' pensions were frozen. The factories underpaying contractors. The silent buyouts pushing out family-owned businesses." She let the words settle like dust. "Those stopped today." Richard stiffened. "Mrs. Thorne, you can't." "I can," Ivy said gently, "and I will." Another silence. Grayson stepped forward, setting a stack of papers on the table. "Mrs. Thorne has signed the executive orders. Legal has vetted them." "I won't destroy Thorne Enterprises," Ivy said, "but I won't let it destroy others either." One by one, the board members met her gaze. Some with resentment, some with grudging respect, some with quiet relief. "You'll have our support," Richard said finally, his tone cautious but sincere, "if you lead wisely." "I don't plan to lead alone," Ivy replied. "I'll listen, I'll learn, I'll ask, but the era of greed first is over." She straightened, gathering the papers. "You may stay, or you may leave. But if you stay, you'll answer to me, and to the principles Logan wanted this company to uphold." Richard gave a slow nod. "Understood." The meeting adjourned. The boardroom emptied. Ivy remained at the head of the table, watching the city beyond the windows. Grayson stepped beside her. "Not bad for your first day." Ivy smiled faintly. "I didn't plan any of this, Arthur." "No," he said, "but Logan did, and he chose right." Ivy's smile deepened, bittersweet. "I hope so." Grayson handed her a small envelope. "Logan left this, for you." She opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note. "My love, if you're reading this, it means you stayed. I always knew you would. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for being my peace. And now be theirs." Logan. Ivy traced the letters with her fingertip, then folded the note carefully, tucking it into her pocket. She looked back at the empty chairs, at the city gleaming under the afternoon sun, at the world she never asked for but had inherited nonetheless. Her lips curved softly. "I'll try, Logan," she whispered. "I'll try." A year had passed. The city gleamed beneath the spring sun, skyscrapers shining like polished glass spires. Atop the Thorne Tower, the rooftop garden swayed gently in the breeze, an oasis of green above the rush and hum of traffic far below. Ivy sat on a wooden bench near a blooming magnolia tree, a book resting closed in her lap. Her cardigan lay folded beside her, the simple linen blouse beneath catching bits of sunlight through the leaves. Across from her, Logan sat in a wheelchair, a blanket over his legs, his eyes tired but bright as they watched the city together. "You really did it," Logan said quietly. Ivy smiled faintly. "We did it," he chuckled, a raspy sound. No, you did. She reached over, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. I didn't want to. I know. His gaze softened. That's why you were the only one who could. The wind carried faint laughter from below, the sounds of life rising from the streets. Ivy let the silence stretch between them, a comfortable quiet, a peace they'd both fought hard to earn. How's the board treating you now? Logan asked. Ivy's lips curved, wry. Half respect me, half fear me. Logan grinned. That's how you know you're doing it right. I'm not you, Logan, she said softly. I never wanted you to be. He looked at her, his gaze steady, warm. I wanted you to be you. She turned away briefly, watching a bird land on the edge of a planter. Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough. Logan's hand found hers, squeezing gently. You've always been enough. They sat there, letting the moment breathe. Ivy leaned back against the bench, closing her eyes briefly, feeling the sun on her face. It's funny, she murmured. Everyone thought I wanted the empire, the money, the power. Logan smiled faintly. They never understood you. No, Ivy said softly. But you did. She opened her eyes again, turning to him. And that's all I ever wanted. Logan's thumb brushed the back of her hand. That's all you ever needed. A gust of wind stirred the magnolia petals, sending them swirling around them like pale confetti. Ivy watched them dance through the air, her heart light. Do you regret it? She asked. Logan's brows lifted. Regret what? Choosing me. He chuckled again, shaking his head slowly. Not for a single second. A tear slid down Ivy's cheek. Good. The sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows across the rooftop. Ivy stood, gathering her cardigan over her arm. She walked behind Logan's chair, resting her hands gently on the handles. Come on, she said softly. Let's go home. Logan leaned his head back, looking up at her, his smile soft. Lead the way, Mrs. Thorne. Ivy pushed him forward, the wheels humming softly against the stone path as they moved toward the elevator. Behind them, the magnolia petals continued to fall. And beneath the fading light, a quiet truth lingered between them. She had stayed, and that was everything.